Hello again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the main event of the
Athletes, take your mark, get set. It's time for the Addict II Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blue Robinson here. I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys doing so. Hey, as always, take a look at that website, addict2athlete.org. You'll find all kinds of information on there. Backlog podcast, we've got some team store merchandise stuff going on there. We have lots of content relating to recovery strategies and a little bit more information on what Team Addict II Athlete offers. So jump on there, check it out. And at Christmas coming up, jump on there, get some racing gear. It's time. And so if you order now, it might be there in time for Christmas. So we'd love to have you guys do that. But we want to thank everybody again for contributing and helping out with our Project ELF. This is Addict II Athlete's kind of year event where we raise funds throughout the year and apply that to this season to help kids who have had families that might have been struggling during the last year, to get them Christmas. It's our Project ELF. Fundraising is still ongoing, so if you'd like to donate, jump on any social media apps that you love, and you'll find Addict Athlete there. You can find links on how to contribute, and maybe even take a family yourself. So thanks to everyone. So athletes, I got a great guest in studio, and I love when we get to have guests in studio because now in this virtual world, everyone comes online, so it's like you don't get to really feel the energy. But Cody, it's so good to have you here, man. I've watched you on social media. We rub shoulders now and then.
Yeah.
You've got a powerful story. I think the first time I really dialed into you is when you had your leg incident where you decided to cannonball off some red cliffs into a very shallow pool. So I think we'll get into that. But brother, introduce yourself. Welcome to the Addict Athlete podcast. Let's jump into this.
Okay. I'm Cody Martensen. Grew up in Utah County. Lived all over though. Struggled with addiction for 21 years.
Mm.
So ever since I was a teenager to early 30s.
Yeah.
So
how old were you when it first started? Like when it first started to make its appearance?
13, 14 years old.
Yeah. That's
young.
That's considered young, but it's about the time that you start, mingling around and seeing some different friends and finding something that, works for some kind of core issue you didn't know you were beginning to develop, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Grateful for the ability and the awareness today to be like, oh, those were my core issues. And today I get to work on them.
Yeah.
So.
It's amazing, man. And I grew up pretty much everywhere in Utah County myself, man. Bounced around, 22 times before I was 18. And my family, they were kind of like a tumbleweed, And so it's kind of crazy. Was your childhood to a degree, was it stable, or did you guys have a lot of moves? Did you have a lot of situational issues that popped up?
No, there was. I remember my childhood being pretty happy. We had everything we wanted, but I think it was just the stuff I felt from my dad being gone.
Right.
And just growing up without a dad.
Yeah.
So I had these internal beliefs or this internal dialogue from 4 or 5 years old of just being sad and depressed.
Yeah. And not really knowing why, right?
Yeah.
You're like, God, what is this feeling? And not being able to put your finger on it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a hard one too, brother. I get that. And I think that sometimes people that don't understand the complexities of addiction, they don't see past the behaviors that someone who's struggling go through, right? They see the use, they see the manipulation, the lying, and those kind of things, and they think that's you. But those are all the symptoms of something deeper. And I think if the public at large really could peel back the layers and see into the heart of hearts, they'd see something very different, wouldn't they?
Yes.
It's not just the thief, the cheat, the liar.
Yeah.
It's deeper.
It's not a moral dilemma. It is a coping skill.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. So about that time, you started kind of dabbling, exploring, kind of figuring things out. And it's probably the same story as most. It takes a hold of you. When did you decide, game over, I'm done? And how many attempts did it take for you to really get on that path?
So I went to rehab when I was early 20s, and I didn't really do any work, Well, and then I went about 9 years ago. Again, didn't really do much work. Ended up relapsing when I got out, and then I went 7.5 years ago.
Mm.
So
Third time was the charm,
Third time was the charm. Well, and I didn't go to rehab to quit.
Mm-hmm.
I somehow, some way, I could still manage my addiction.
Yeah.
And so, I ended up getting kicked out of rehab, and it was a really wake up call because my kids were in state's custody, and I was about to go to prison.
Right.
And then I ended up relapsing, and the whole time I was relapsing, I was like, I don't want to do this, but I couldn't say no to that drug.
For sure.
And so it was a huge wake up call. Grateful the rehab let me come back, and just had a spiritual awakening of like every idea I had ever had led me to that hotel room again, getting high.
Really?
Yeah.
See, so I like the principle behind that too. And a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their heads around that they were all necessary steps to get where you were going, right? I mean, no matter what, those things had to happen. And I don't think people put a lot of stock into that because they think, it's, coincidence or whatever. But when you really start analyzing and looking back, you can see all those mile markers that like led you to that change of heart.
Yes.
I mean, for you, what was that epiphany? What was kind of like they call it the aha moment, right? I call it like the pivot, right? What was it where you're just like, so this is it?
Yeah.
What was it for you?
I was sitting in an apartment by myself in rehab. And it was just, I couldn't manage my life.
Yeah.
I didn't know. All my choices led me to that hotel room again. And so I was just like, I need to let somebody else run the show for a little bit.
So you were like, I got to surrender.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Geez, Cody, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But when you're sitting there and it's like slapping you in the face and you're like, how did I get here? It's like the Talking Head song, right?
Yeah.
How did I get here?
Yes.
You let all those days go by and finally like, is this seriously what I want? Those awakenings are interesting. I have another podcast called The Agents of Recovery with a guy named Brock Bevel. And he had one of those. He was in the bathroom, pills, all this stuff, shuts the mirror, and he caught the room and the mess of the home and the environment he was in the mirror. And he's like, is this really me?
Yeah.
Those moments come at interesting points. Yeah. Did you believe yourself at that point? Were you like, it's on? Or were you like, we'll see?
Yeah, I didn't know how. I didn't know how I was going to get through it all. When I went to rehab, I had 10 open court cases all over the state of Utah.
Really?
Yeah.
They knew who you were, huh?
Yeah. I was on probation. I was in DCFS drug court. I was on ankle monitor in rehab. So I kind of looked at my choices up to that point. And like, there wasn't another program I could be in or a state agency.
Right.
And it was just like, what do I got to lose? If I try it their way, what do I got to lose?
Dude, that's like the mindset of at the bottom.
Yeah.
The only way is up, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get the ball moving? I'm curious, like 10 court cases, one after the other. You had to throw that white flag in the air and surrender. Like, what did you do?
I just became willing, like whatever anybody asked me to do. If they asked me to read a book or do an assignment, I just said, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just followed the instruction, like, okay.
Well, and at the time I was fighting for custody of my kids, and it was a huge wake up call because DCFS was like, you're the last person we're going to put your kids with.
Yeah.
And I was like, and at the time
I've seen that before. Yeah.
At the time I was like, why? And then now looking back, I'm like, oh, well,
like,
no wonder
maybe
they said
that's
that.
why.
But so I had to come to surrender. So my kids were my drive the whole time. And then I think I had 6 months in recovery, and they said, your kids aren't coming with you. And so it was like a huge wake up call of like, all right, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because that was my whole reason. And so right then and there, I decided no matter where my kids went, no matter if my kids liked me, no matter if I was homeless, no matter if I had a job or a girlfriend, or I was going to not use drugs for no matter what.
No matter what, that was the end.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, Cody, that say that that's really not possible to make a declaration like that, draw that line in the sand and say, I'm done. I've done it. You've done it. Lots of people do it. Why do you think there are a few of those out there that are like, that was too simple. It's too easy.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as I was willing to do anything to get drugs,
Mm.
why don't I use that same energy to
Flip the script, eh?
flip the script?
I love it.
And what I found is I only have to put 25% of the effort that I did in my addiction
Seriously.
towards recovery, and my life is amazing.
Man, I'm with you on that. And this is one thing I've noticed with guys that, and gals that come through in recovery is they don't realize how amazing they authentically are. I mean, they are creators, right? I mean, they literally can create something out of nothing. I mean, you remember when you had no money, you had no ability, you needed to get high. At the end of the day, you had it.
Yeah.
Those same principles apply on the flip side if you're trying to do something positive. It's just that our brains don't look at it that way.
No.
But you flipped the switch all by yourself and thought, wait a minute, if I put in this energy, this could happen. And then you notice, man, I might be putting a little too much. Maybe I'll throttle it back so I have some other energy. And you found that like this, once you're coasting, you're going.
Yes.
I love it. So you decided to work your tail off for your family, which meant being accountable to a lot of different people, places, and things, I'd imagine.
Yes.
What was that like, kind of opening that door to some humility and being like, yeah, hey, sorry about all that, and being able to stand up on your own 2 feet?
It was a powerful thing. I just got to work, and it seemed like each class they told me to take, or each book they told me to read, like my life kind of leveled up.
Yeah.
And I got a new perspective or some new things to do. Big fan of books. I've read, probably 250 to 300 books since I've been in recovery.
Gaining the knowledge, eh?
Yeah. And I think Zig Ziglar says everything you need to have a happy, healthy life has already been written.
Yeah.
And so I just became aware of like these people that have spent their whole lifetime studying a subject.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to spend a whole lifetime.
Yeah.
I can read the knowledge and apply what works for me to my life. So I just got reading books and applying some things to my life that, I see these people like, why won't it work for me?
Dude, I love that, man. Because the hard part that you're speaking is the actual authentic work. It's the gathering the tools to influence yourself, to gain knowledge, to apply that to wisdom, as the Serenity Prayer says. And I think that's kind of an amazing thing. I don't think a lot of people give themselves the grace to do that kind of stuff, man. I mean, they see this book and they're like, a therapist might recommend it, right? And they may borrow the book and never return it, because that's usually what happens with my clients. But the funny thing is like they kind of stop. But you're like, these guys have already apparently crossed these landscapes of life. They've got some value. I'm going to look for them. That's amazing, man. To be humble enough to like invest in that and give yourself the grace and time to do it.
Yes.
Because I'm not a fast reader. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and me neither.
That's awesome.
I used to be better at reading, and of course, life gets in the way
for
today,
sure.
But but I have a stack next to my bed of books that I want to read, and I keep ordering more. So, dude,
I love it, man. Like, if you can consider audiobooks reading, I've got quite a few down.
I've tried that, but I fall asleep. Or after an hour of listening to it, I'm like, wait, what did I just listen to?
My ADHD brain doesn't like But I think that's awesome, man. And so slowly but surely, the people in those positions of authority started seeing some change? Were they kind of shocked by it? Were they like, dude, what's going on with you?
Yeah. Well, I started going above and beyond all expectations, and then just saying, what's next? So one by one, the court cases closed successfully.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the comments the judges made to you as those were finished? Did they see the efforts? Were they like just stamp and move on?
Yeah. Some were, there were times I was standing in front of judges and I just said, I take full accountability for my addiction, and this is what I'm doing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them would be like, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what did you just say? Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they hear all day long the excuses.
For sure, man.
This person or that person, or it wasn't me. And so I decided that I wasn't going to be one of those people.
Yeah.
So, I did this, but this is what I'm doing about it.
Dude, that's a good point. And I've seen that firsthand too. I've been back in judge chambers and stuff when they've talked about and discussed client cases and things when I worked for the county and drug court and stuff. And the level of desire that all of them that I worked with had to see success in the people that they're working with was always paramount. It was always kind of like, what can we do? And it was always funny when like probation would want to like enforce something and treatment would say, well, let's do this. And they would gravitate a lot towards treatment.
Yeah.
And the cool part about that was there were times when I had to put my neck out for some people and be like, let's give them one more shot. Let's let them know. And the probation, I was like, no, it's done. And they want to wash their hands of it. And the judge is like, well, I believe in this person. And I'm thinking, that's pretty wild. I think the drug court program revolutionized the whole concept of authority versus subordinate. It's like, let's get you help.
Yeah.
So family drug court, that's a bugger too, because you've got a lot at stake there. Traditional drug court, plea and abeyance, right?
Yeah.
Family drug court, family.
Yeah.
So
you had to do family therapy, and you had to do more parenting classes, and parenting through stress and love and logic and all these classes. I mean, I should have brought in the certificates to show you.
So cool, man.
Like, I have a folder of just the things I've done over the last 7 years.
The milestones of your success.
Yeah.
As you started coming online then, and you started really, like you said, fighting for your family, what did your kids do? What did they see? Were they like, is this guy for real? Is he going to be here? Because, and I want to talk about this in a minute, but like just seeing your daughter up there singing in a capacity of like royalty to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, what? And just amazing. Like, even though there were some hard parts in there, like your kids, they're powerhouses.
Yeah.
So how did they come online with you? Were they like, are you serious this time, Dad? Like, I mean, that's the real situation, right?
Yeah. Well, and it was great. So when I finally, after I think I had like 14 months in recovery, 15 months in recovery, the state came to me and said, do you still want custody of your kids? And I was like, yeah.
It's not even a question, huh?
Yeah. And because dads are supposed to say that, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I remember sitting there like 2 months after my two oldest boys had come home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh crap, is this really what I want? Like, this is hard.
I'm glad you're talking this. Yeah. You're true. I've heard this before.
And because when I got my boys, they didn't trust me. They didn't respect me. They probably didn't even like me. And I think my oldest boy said, Dad, I don't know if I want to live with you.
Yeah.
And
how old was he?
He was 15.
Okay.
So, and then my second son was 12, 13.
Gotcha.
So they were teenagers.
Yeah. They start making their own decisions then. Yeah. Have their own ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I just sat down with them and said, I don't know what other options we have, but let's give it a shot.
Right.
And I got to sit down with them and write out what we expected from each other. Like, what do you expect from me as a dad?
Wow.
And I wrote what I expected of them as kids. And it was a pretty cool moment. Like,
that is huge.
Here in my 15 and my, some of them were like, well, I don't care to do this. And I'm like, no, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Well, they don't know how to. Like, you want me to critique you, what I expect of you. And that's giving them a platform to say, I know that I've messed up.
The space.
And if I know that this is what you expect of me, then I want to rise to that and then some. That's a really cool thing. Had to be a little bit humbling too, right? Like, anything could have come across that table.
Yeah. Well, and then I think I had 2 years in recovery. And my youngest or my second son said to me, I think we were hanging out playing Xbox one night or something. And he said to me, Dad, I'm still waiting for the day you don't come home.
And that's 2 years after.
Yeah.
Dude,
and
how did that land on you?
At the time, like, I found myself in my head wanting to go to, oh, well, look at me now.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I just said, thank you for sharing that with me.
Oh, man.
I really appreciate that.
A+ response, brother.
Yeah, because it really hit home of like, even though I was 2 years in recovery, like, in the back of his mind, he was constantly wondering, is my dad coming home tonight?
Yeah.
Is he going to take off again? What's he going to do?
Man, I could just picture him sitting there, like just enjoying that time. And like, my dad's here with me. And Xbox is a fun thing. I do with my kids all the time too, man. My two boys, I'm always handing them controller. Here, can you pass this part for me? Like, we're always doing some fun stuff like that, little Call of Duty, things like that. But I can just imagine your son sitting there, like just really enjoying that moment, being like, oh yeah, there's a potential this might not happen again. And for him to feel safe enough to say that to you.
Yeah.
And for you to be like, thank you for telling me, man.
Yeah.
It reinforces the fact that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, but also like, look at what you're doing for your kids. You're giving them a foundation to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. And then I think a month later, he said, do you remember when you didn't show up for my 8th birthday? And I was like, yeah, I remember. He's like, that was messed up.
Did you? Yeah, it was, man.
It was. And I think there were some swear words in there too, but it was just.
Again, testing you to see how's he going to respond, because he's been carrying that.
Yeah.
And you're like, you acknowledge it. You're like, yeah, man, that was, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Never again. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a cool thing. Not a lot of people allow their kids to give them feedback.
Yeah.
You noticed that?
Yeah. What can I be doing better? Or is there anything, have I wronged you in some way?
Yeah.
I noticed there's times where me and my kids butt heads today.
Go figure. So do we.
Instead of just being in charge. So I'll try to sit down with them and say, okay, have I wronged you in some way? We're butting heads. What's going on?
Right.
Like what I don't like what we're doing, and let's move past it, or let's get it out in the air, and so that we can treat each other better.
Dude, I love that, man. One of the most humbling things I've ever experienced was apologizing to my kid. And I've done it to all of them in one way, shape, or form. But my oldest son, Boston, when he was still a little guy, I told the story on the podcast, but it's worth repeating. I was serving as an LDS bishop, and so Sundays are crazy. But it was Father's Day, so I'm like, no meetings, I'm leaving, right?
Yeah.
And we're all kind of gathered by the bishop's door. I left really early in the morning, for meetings and stuff, and so we both drove separate cars, my wife and I. And I'm like, all right, girls go with mom, boys, I'll take you, so we can kind of split and divide and conquer. And shutting the bishop's door, locking it up, and I look up and I see Marissa just kind of hook around the corner with the two girls. And I look down and I see my little youngest son, Camden, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess Boston must have went with her.
Yeah.
So Cam jumps in the car. They go home, ready to celebrate Father's Day. Sit down, and I'm like, it's awfully quiet here. And I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Where's the fourth? I'm like, oh my gosh, where's Boston? And I automatically blame Marissa. I'm like, you left Boston. She's like, hey, you were supposed to bring it. I had the girls. And I'm like, dude, my stomach just drops. Now, in that moment of craziness, what I think, like someone's going to kidnap him from church? No. But I left a man behind.
Yeah.
And so I jumped in the car, started driving, and I'm looking at the side. We didn't live very far, but I'm looking at the sidewalk, make sure I don't miss him. I turn the corner, see the church, and he comes popping out of the door. Little scriptures, just defeated. And I'm like, oh, there he is. I pull up, right? And I said, get in here. And I start yelling at him.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Yeah.
He's like, I was right there. I'm like, you were not right there. And then it hit me like, be careful.
Yeah.
Whose fault is it there, Chief?
Huh.
It's your fault, Dad. You're the one that left him behind. And I sucked that back in. I'm like, dude, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
Left you behind. And he was like, I was right there. And I had to just let it happen, man. And I'm so sorry, man. We go home and, let him kind of drag me across the coals a little bit, and make a little joke later on. Hey, remember that time I left you at church? He's like, yeah. But I'm like, and that was the second time I had to apologize to him. But like those kind of moments where you allow your kids to like see the human part of you is huge. And so listening to your son being able to poke you a little bit.
Yeah.
And for you to be like, I've earned that and I understand and I'll show you.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Cody.
Yeah. Yeah, there's times throughout, and I still try to do that, provide that space for him today. My two oldest boys have moved out and they're all grown up now.
Yeah.
Try to be grown ups and I try to check in with them once a week and hey, are you happy? What are you doing with your life? Like, and they're like, Dad, that's a weird question. I'm like, why do you got to make it weird?
Yeah, man, just answer my question, man. Yeah.
And I tell them, I don't remember having those talks with my dad.
No, I'm sure you didn't. Yeah.
And they kind of just, half the time they don't answer, but at least I'm asking those questions. Yeah,
but you're also planting seeds, right? Because one day they're going to tell you, and they're going to know what you're saying because they're going to be in those experiences. But that's the thing too, is you probably yearn for what I yearn for. I mean, mom married and divorced a bazillion times. Stepdads came and go. It's like changing underwear. And so I never really got close with any of them. The thing that was odd though, is that when my mom kind of defected from the family, kind of abandoned us all, like there was this feeling of like, how cool would it be if like she called me one day, I was like, hey, I'm super proud of you. I saw you in the newspaper or I talked to somebody whose kid's in your program or something. How cool would that be? Never came.
Yeah.
Never came. Even as an adult, I'm like, that'd be cool to have that. Never came. So I love the fact that you recognize that as well. And you're like, I'm going to give those to my kids
Yeah.
so that they know, A, I'm proud of them, I love them,
Yeah.
and that B, that when the time comes and they have an answer for that question, they're going to be able to call me and say, Dad, I've been thinking about this.
Yeah.
It's huge, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and your daughters, because again, I was blown away. I mean, they all saw you at the Addicts Fighting Back dinner that they had for some fundraising, and had no idea that some of the Orem City royalty
Yes.
was your daughter.
Yes.
And she got there and demonstrated some of her talents. And I tell my wife, Marissa, I'm like, this girl's incredible. Look at this.
Yeah.
And she got up there and spoke about you. And obviously, she's very aware that there are tons of people in recovery there.
Yeah.
You've done what I think I've helped my kids do, is see that there's more to people than just that label. Yeah. But I'm curious, like, what's her role in all this with you? Because that was cool, Cody.
Yeah. So about 4 years ago, I got a phone call that their mom had been arrested. And so they were living in South Carolina at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I flew out there, brought them back, went through a custody case.
You went out, I mean, how old were they? About the same as when you got your boys? Because
Mia was 13 and Chloe was 10.
See, so, I mean, 13, man. Like she's got established friends. She has all this stuff. You've been out here. She's out there. Like, and that couldn't have been easy.
And it destroyed them, but just working through that, being able to be there for them and work through it. And it doesn't matter if they're angry at me or mad at me, try to provide a good life for them, a better life than I had.
I love you no matter what. And even if, right. It's like, we're going.
Yeah. And went through kind of a custody case with that. And about 3 years ago, she just was like, I want to try out for Miss Teen Orem. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm a busy
You're
person.
New to this. You're like, what is that?
Yeah. And my mom helped her out a lot. And my wife now, but fiance at the time, helped her out a lot. And I was like, I don't know if I'm a busy, I don't know if I have the time or energy to do it.
Absolutely.
But if it's something you want to do, like you might have to figure out how to get there. And so, and she lost for a couple years. She tried out and did good. And part of me was like glad she didn't win.
As a father, I can understand that. Yeah.
And she was almost done this last year. And I was like, you've already tried twice. Why not try once more? And we talked. And so she tried and she won Miss Teen's Orem, Miss Orem's Teen. And her initiative is to do with teen drug use. Never start, always prepared.
Oh man.
What it's called. And
I have a podcast called the Minor League Podcast.
Yeah.
My daughter Savannah, and I host it. She talks about that kind of stuff. Would you extend an invitation to have her come?
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. I'd love to have her here.
Yeah. She'd be awesome. And she talked.
What's her name?
Mia.
This is Coach Blue. I'm asking you to be a guest on our podcast. So tell your dad and he'll get in touch with me.
Yeah. So, but listening to her as being a kid that grew up with addict parents, and hearing her side of the story, what it was like for her or what it's still like for her, but I drag them along to all my recovery events and this is what we're doing. And these are good people, and so she's tied in just as much as I am. Yeah. With all these different organizations. And
it's huge because there's also that concept of like, self-worth and esteem that gets attached to your family system. And so there's, typically embarrassment and like, secrecy and stuff. But I love the fact that she's embracing it because she too has seen the bar that you've raised for yourself. And kids are great reflections of ourselves. If we're lacking or slacking, they're going to tell us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's cool that she even feels the magnitude of that and can say, the help I can give other people simply by being aware of how I was raised, what's going on. And for you not to be embarrassed by it, not to be like, don't say anything. These are my people, but to be like, I get it. I know.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. How much weight does that take off your shoulder to literally be like, and I think you're right around my age too, Cody. So I'm going to say this out loud, but to be like the Popeye, right? Yeah. A lot of people don't know who that is anymore. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. To be able to like seriously say that, despite what has happened in the past, it's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. I just decided when I got into recovery, like there's going to be no more secrets. All my closet doors are going to be open. I'm going to live like, and everything on the table. I'm going to be honest with my kids. I'm not going to hide anything from them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there might be some things I don't talk to them about.
Well, for sure, age appropriate, for sure. I get it. Yeah.
But like, if any question they can ask me, and I'll take the time, or I'll even tell them, you know, maybe in a couple of years I'll talk to you about this. But but
just know I'm aware.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and we have open dialogue in our house about talking about depression, or talking about suicidal thoughts, or talking about happiness, or what, you know. There's nothing.
There's no taboo topics, is there?
No, it's anything we can talk about at any time.
Yeah, I think when parents start talking to kids about that stuff, they get scared. Like talk about sex or you know, suicidal behaviors or all these things. Like they pucker up, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that goes right into like the frontal lobe of that teenager's like, well, there's a topic I can't discuss now.
Yeah.
If I, you know, come home and I need to talk to dad about something, but he's already told me like how much this is, you know, not appropriate or whatever, like then I'm stuffing this.
Yeah.
So it's cool. And I'm also glad you said that, age appropriate, because you need to be a parent, not a friend.
Yeah.
And it can, you know, ebb and flow between there, but they need parents.
Yes.
That's rad.
Well, and one thing I noticed the first couple of years new to parent, because I never had full time custody of my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I was always the Disneyland dad that took them on the weekends, amped them up on sugar and took them home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was hard. And I parented a lot out of shame and guilt.
Yeah. Happens.
And tried to make up for the time I wasn't there, or the bad things I've done. And I think I just had this switch. I don't know exactly 3 years ago or something, but I was like, you know what, there's nothing I can do about the past.
Right.
But I'm not going to give in or create this dual dialogue that things are okay when they're not, just because I feel bad about what I've done.
Spot on, man.
So it's changed. You know, some weeks my kids don't like me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
You know, I was talking to a couple about, you know, parenting and whatnot just yesterday, and you know, they have set rules, and those are great, and they have chores out there, and that's great. But the word control kept getting thrown out there, and I'm like, if you're seriously trying to control your children, you're going to lose.
Yeah,
kids will always win. If you get into a tug of war with them, they have this uncanny ability to just wait you out.
Yeah,
you know, and so why even get into that controlling kind of relationship? And so you're eloquently demonstrating this concept that most people are kind of afraid to even explore because it makes no sense. And that's building relationships before rules.
Yeah.
And there are still rules, but you've got to have the relationship or else no one's going to follow the rules. I mean, you think about in treatment, you think about in the law, whatever. You've got to have a relationship or else your rules can go out the window.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're parenting out of inconvenience.
Yeah.
Cody, that's cool, man.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm just blown away by that. So, like I said, you kind of came online with me, and I'd seen you around a little bit. But when you guys were documenting this experience down to, was it Arizona? Where were you guys? Was it you that had the broken leg?
Yeah, I broke.
And you were like life flighted out of some.
Well, they search and rescue.
Search and rescue got you.
Carried me out of the canyon.
And I remember talking to someone that knew you, and you know, obviously they're like. Cody's got to have pain pills, man, but he's going to be fine. And I'm like, well, how do you know? He's like, I know Cody. But dude, that's kind of when I started noticing you, because you started investing in community resource too. Yeah. Like after treatment and all that kind of stuff, what groups did you find kind of gravitated towards what you wanted and needed? Because, you know, there were some cool ones out there. And I remember that. I'm like, the whole situation that happened to you, I'm like, that's the worst thing. But I'm sure it taught you something.
Yeah. I finally, so I had one of the guys in the treatment center always said, you become an average of the 5 people you hang out with.
That's right.
And so I took that really to heart, and I started hanging out with people that I started paying attention to people's actions instead of their mouths. And so, you know, I was new to this recovery thing. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to be a good employee. I didn't know how to be a good dad. I didn't know how to do life, you know. And so I just started hanging out with people that had more clean time than me, were productive members of society, were good parents, and I just started, hopefully I turned into these people.
Yeah. It's like that level up concept, right? Yeah.
And it really worked for me. You know, it's crazy to think today that like my friends are doctors and therapists and clinicians and people with probation and at the state and judges, and because I was they were not my friends.
You're on the opposite side there for a while.
8 years ago. So I do a 12-step program. I love it. It's changed my life. It's awesome. It's my home. But I also do Addicts Fighting Back.
Yeah.
I'm on the board of directors for them, and we just get involved and see where we can help out.
Yeah, I love that group more than anything. Like, it was cool to be able to start building some bridges between Addicts Fighting Back and Addict Athlete. They picked amazing people for their board, and people that I really inspired too. And so I'm like, well, if they're putting them on the board, then they're going to be a solid program, because these people, they're not going to lead anything astray. And just the concept of being able to fight back and to say, no, there's more than this. And then the community stuff. Every time there's a community event, I always see Cody. I'm like, well, there you are.
Yeah.
I think that's the coolest thing, man. Those were the 5+ people that you sort of surrounding yourself with, and what's been the result?
Amazing. We have these group of friends that we just check each other, and I'm constantly checking my friends' intentions, and they're checking mine.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, what's your intention in this? What do you want to see come? Are you coming from a place of ego, or are you coming from a place of, it's about me? Because it's never about us anymore. It's about other people, and getting to that role of service. And I have a life that I remember when I left rehab, prayed for, just prayed. I want this. And it's funny because now in recovery, when hard times come, I find myself complaining. And then I'm like, wait, no, I prayed for this.
Yeah, I wanted this.
Why am I complaining? So I
awesome.
try not to complain, but it comes out every once in a while,
I love it, man. And that's the thing too, is, be careful what you ask and wish for, because you'll get it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure that whatever comes down the pipeline is manageable compared to what's happened in the past. It's like, all right, this sucks, but I've been in worse. So I got that mindset. I think it's cool, man. And Addicts Fighting Back is a great organization. Softball and all that kind of stuff. See everybody out there doing. It's no longer has to be stigmatized. I mean, through all your experience of treatment and therapy and community, what are some of the key points that you've taken from your experience that you can apply to wisdom that have maintained your path of recovery? Like, what are some of the things that you hold like true and kind of precious? That's like, I know for me this worked.
The saying in the 12-step program I go to is, we didn't become an addict in one day. So remember, easy does it.
Yeah.
And it was huge for me, because just knowing that some of this stuff isn't going to be fixed in a month or two.
Exactly.
Or a year or two. It took me 5 years to pay off my fines. It took me 3 years to pay off my back child support. I had to claim bankruptcy 3 years in 2 years in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Like, some of this stuff just took work.
Yeah.
I drove hoopty cars for 5 years.
Yeah.
I had my license taken away for 2 years. So I had to ride public transportation.
Yeah.
And, and just remembering that these things are temporary, that it won't be like this forever.
Man.
And it was just huge that if I just chip away at things, they'll be gone, or they'll be done. But I just need to do a little bit of effort every day.
Delayed gratification in recovery is one of the most hard principles, I think, to wrap your head around. Yeah. But you've somehow been able to master it because you put higher priorities first, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So on that priority list, what is your North Star? What is your highest priority now in recovery?
It's myself today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's, for the longest time, my whole life, I didn't pick me.
Yeah. Most don't.
Yeah.
You passed that test, by the way.
Yeah,
well done.
It's my connection with my higher power.
Mm-hmm.
It's feeding my soul today.
Yeah.
It's making sure I honor the light within me, and then doing things that amplify that.
For sure.
And I get to do those things every day, or because I know if I don't, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah. You played that tape before.
Yeah. And I have so much evidence that that's who I am if I don't do the things I need to.
Yeah, man.
And
I love it, Cody. That's a cool principle, listeners. I need you guys to understand that behind there. I mean, I asked that question to quite a few people, and you're one of the very few that pass. And my kids, my job,
Yeah.
and it's like, again, you're no good if you don't put yourself higher on that list, huh?
Yeah.
I love it.
And there's sometimes my kids will say, like, do you have to go to those meetings? And I'm like, do you like having a dad today?
Yeah.
And I break it down. I was like, I give them an hour or two, and then I get the rest of the week, and so my kids are very aware. And if I'm always, you guys can come if you want.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want to come, and I'm like, okay, I need an hour or two for me. But
it's a big deal to be able to be honest with them like that too. I mean, so many times we do this out of guilt, and it doesn't work. It's not long-term sustainable mindset, is it? Like you've tried to parent by guilt. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Another one of the awakenings for me is I can't remember a book, but it had an acronym for shame, and it was should have already mastered everything.
Yeah.
And the lady said,
I like it.
That's bull crap.
Absolutely.
Because we're in the classroom of life. And so I remember whenever the shame or guilt comes up, I'm like, remember, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Even this many years old, I'm still learning. I'm still applying. I look at myself as 7 years old.
Yeah.
So
to a lot of degree we are. Right.
Yeah. And sometimes my adult children are more emotionally mature than me.
Yeah.
I
love it.
I try not to do things based off of emotion, but I'd be a liar if I said I didn't.
I think it's awesome, man. I think it's way cool.
Yeah.
Quick, curious, brother. Like, how do people find you, Addicts Fighting Back? Like, and what do you say to that person that's out there that's in your situation, that's kind of like got the 10 charges, the kids in state's custody, who just is like, in that pivot point of like, should I stay or should I go? Like, what do you say to them?
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Sometimes 1 hour at a time. What can you do today? Spend that 20 minutes a day on yourself, whether it's connecting with your higher power, whether it's meditating or going outside or working out or whatever it is to take care of you, to feed your soul. Do that, just and one day at a time. Like,
I like it.
All those court cases didn't get closed. It took some work.
Took time.
Yeah. And so just work on yourself. I made a list of like, I took a break from relationships when I got into recovery, and I wrote down what I wanted in a relationship.
Brilliant.
And then I started working on becoming those things. And so like I started building my character and my honesty and my integrity and all those things that I wanted.
Jeez.
Communication, everything. And I believe we attract what we are.
For sure.
So if you work on those things, like your character, you're going to attract that character. So those type of people are going to just flow into your life.
They're just going to come.
Yeah.
That is amazing, man. I love that principle so much. It's one of those cool things too, when you can be humble enough to admit that you're still in school, right? Like, I don't know everything, but I'm willing to learn and listen from whoever's speaking it. If it's something that's congruent with me, I'll take it on board.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man.
I agree. Yeah.
Addicts Fighting Back website, right?
Yeah. They're online and they're on Facebook. It's a private group, 501c3 that we do events, softball tournaments, stuff like that. Just come get involved. We wanted to provide a place for people, a community when people get done with treatment or they don't know where to go.
Exactly.
Like, hit us up, come get involved.
Yeah.
There's events, sometimes we barbecue, sometimes we hang out.
Yeah.
We have birthday parties. We go to dinner.
Do homeless outreach. I mean, coat drives. That's one of the coolest things. That's why I love partnering up with you guys, because you guys are doers, man. I love it. And so, Addicts Fighting Back. Jump on the website, jump on socials. They do their meetings. I eavesdropped on one of their meetings once because they had here in the home base last year. And I was in here doing some podcast editing and stuff. I was about ready to leave. I'm like, I don't want to walk through their meeting. So I stood there for a second, and it was powerful stuff. And it's not a traditional 12-step meeting. It's community helping community. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, these guys are rock stars.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's go back over and fart around a little more before we finish. I didn't want to interrupt the meeting, but I was impressed by just everyone's willingness to just be real. Yeah. Cross talking, coming up with ideas, pointing things out. I'm like, this is rad. So I loved. I'm a big believer in what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, and we wanted to provide a place too. There's no stigma.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you recover. Just come be a part of.
Can be a part of it.
Yeah. Like I'm a big 12-stepper and it was pounded into my head. This is what you do. But that I don't get to push that on somebody else.
No.
And that's my way to recover. Like I hope you find whatever it takes for you to recover.
For sure.
Whether it's exercising, whether it's just coming and hanging out, whether it's 12-step or refuge, or I mean, there's so many ways to recover today.
There really are. There's a lot of paths to it,
which I love.
Absolutely. And so that's a gold star for me, brother. Just again, the magnitude of the people that are there. They're invested. So check it out, listeners. Cody, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. I know we've had to reschedule a few times, so thanks for not giving up on us. But let's get her in here and do some podcasts. And I'd love to have her part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the minor league podcast with Savannah. We geared towards the youth, and so parents, you get a lot from those too. So stay tuned. So anyway, listeners, you've been well fed. Thanks so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing. Please continue to do all that you do. Again, thank you all who's donated so far for Project Help. If you feel inclined to help out with our efforts, please jump on our socials, and you can find a way to give us some time and maybe some attention, and you might change the life of somebody this Christmas. And so all that's on the website as well, addict2athlete.org. Athletes, until next time, turn that mess into a message.
Thank you.